struggling single mother, Emma's life is a quiet storm of survival until Ethan, a charming delivery boy with a hidden ambition, knocks on her door. What begins as a simple act of kindness unfolds into an unexpected journey of love, resilience, and second chances that will forever change their lives. Ethan leaned against the faded delivery van parked outside the bustling grocery store. The winter air was crisp, biting at his exposed hands as he loaded the last of the grocery bags into the back. His dream of owning a fleet of sleek, eco-friendly delivery vehicles seemed miles away, but he wasn't one to dwell on the impossible. For now, this beat-up van was his lifeline, his way of keeping his mother comfortable and his aspirations alive. The text alert on his phone buzzed. A new delivery request. Ethan glanced at the address. It was in the quieter part of town where life moved at a slower pace. He smiled to himself. He'd always liked the charm of small neighborhoods, the warmth of familiar faces. Adjusting his woolen scarf, he hopped into the van and drove off. Emma wiped her flour-dusted hands on her apron as she hurried to answer the knock at the door. She wasn't expecting anyone today, but then again the unexpected had become her life's theme. Raising a spirited 5-year-old on her own had taught her to always be on her toes. Opening the door, she was greeted by a young man with sharp features and kind eyes, holding a brown paper bag. His dark brown hair peeked out from beneath a woolen cap, and his shy smile revealed perfectly imperfect dimples. "Hi, Mom. I'm Ethan, your delivery guy for today," he said, his voice warm despite the cold. "Hi, Ethan," Emma replied, her lips curving into a polite smile. "You can call me Emma. Thanks for coming all the way out here." Ethan waved off her gratitude. "It's no trouble at all. Where should I set these?" Emma stepped aside to let him in. "The counter's fine. Thank you." As Ethan entered, he caught a glimpse of the small yet cozy space. It was filled with little signs of life, a child's drawing pinned to the fridge, a stack of books on the coffee table, and the faint scent of freshly baked cookies lingering in the air. He placed the groceries on the counter, noting how meticulously clean everything was, despite the clear signs of a busy household. "Mommy, who is it?" a small voice piped up from behind. Ethan turned to see a boy with messy blonde curls peeking around the corner, clutching a stuffed dinosaur. His wide blue eyes sparkled with curiosity. "This is Ethan. He brought us groceries," Emma explained, smiling gently at her son. "Hi, buddy," Ethan said, crouching down to Noah's eye level. "What's your name?" "Noah," the boy answered shyly, holding the dinosaur closer. "Nice to meet you, Noah. That's a cool dino you've got there. What's his name?" Noah hesitated before whispering, "Spike." Ethan grinned. "Spike, huh? That's a strong name. I bet he's the king of all the dinosaurs." The boy's face lit up, and Emma couldn't help but notice the way Ethan spoke to Noah, not with forced cheerfulness, but with genuine interest. It was rare to see someone connect so easily with her son, and it warmed her heart in a way she hadn't felt in years. Later that evening, as Emma unpacked the groceries, her mind drifted to Ethan. There was something about him, his easy demeanor, his kindness, and the way he didn't seem to pity her like others often did when they found out she was a single mom. Instead, he treated her like a person, not a project to be fixed. Still, she shook her head, chastising herself for letting her thoughts wander. She had no time for romance. Her life was about providing for Noah and nothing else. Yet, as she put away the last of the groceries, she found herself smiling without realizing it. Ethan, too, found his thoughts drifting to the woman with soft brown hair and eyes that seemed to hold a story he couldn't yet read. She had an air of resilience about her, a quiet strength that intrigued him. He knew better than to get attached to customers. He'd learned that lesson early on. But something about Emma and her little boy lingered in his mind as he drove back. Over the next few weeks, Emma and Ethan's paths crossed more often. Ethan became the regular delivery guy for her area, and each time he showed up, their interactions grew a little longer, a little warmer. He'd bring small jokes to make Noah laugh, and sometimes Emma would surprise him with a cup of coffee to ward off the cold. One snowy afternoon, as Ethan handed Emma her groceries, he noticed her shivering. "You should get inside. It's freezing out here," he said, concern lacing his voice. Emma laughed lightly. "I'll be fine. It's just a little snow." Ethan hesitated, then pulled off his scarf and handed it to her. "Here, take this. I've got plenty of layers." Emma blinked in surprise, touched by the gesture. "Ethan, I can't—" "Consider it part of the delivery service," he interrupted with a grin, his cheeks tinged pink from the cold. "Or perhaps something more." She accepted the scarf, her fingers brushing his briefly. It was warm, soft, and smelled faintly of cedar and winter air. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice softer than she intended. Their eyes met for a moment longer than usual, and in that fleeting silence, something unspoken passed between them. A spark, fragile yet undeniable, flickered to life. And that evening, as Emma sat by the fireplace reading to Noah, she caught herself holding Ethan's scarf close, its warmth lingering long after the fire had begun to die down. Ethan, on the other hand, sat in his van, replaying the image of Emma's smile in his mind. It wasn't just her beauty that captivated him. It was the strength behind her eyes, the quiet determination in her every move. Both of them, in their own quiet spaces, couldn't shake the feeling that their lives had begun to change in ways they couldn't quite define. Ethan adjusted the delivery box in his hands as he approached Emma's house. Snowflakes drifted lazily from the sky, blanketing the neighborhood in a pristine white. He had started looking forward to his deliveries to Emma's house more than he cared to admit. There was something about the warmth of her home, the sparkle in Noah's eyes, and the soft kindness in Emma's voice that made him feel more at home than he had in years. He knocked lightly, the sound muffled by the snow, and was met with Noah's excited voice on the other side. "Mommy, it's Ethan. Can I open the door?" Emma chuckled from somewhere inside. "Go ahead, sweetie, just don't let all the cold in." The door swung open and there was Noah, grinning ear to ear. "Hi, Ethan. Did you bring the cookies?" Ethan laughed, kneeling to Noah's level. "Not today, buddy, but maybe next time. How's Spike doing?" "He's great. He ate a big sandwich for lunch," Noah said proudly, holding up the stuffed dinosaur. "Good to know Spike's got a healthy appetite," Ethan replied, ruffling Noah's hair before stepping inside. Emma appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Her sweater hugged her figure, and a few loose strands of hair framed her face, making her look effortlessly beautiful. Ethan felt his breath hitch for a split second before he regained his composure. "Hey, Ethan," she said with a warm smile. "Thanks for braving the snow for us." "Snow's not so bad," Ethan replied, setting the box on the counter. "Besides, you and Noah make it worth the trip." Emma's cheeks flushed at his words, and she busied herself unpacking the groceries to avoid his gaze. "Well, we appreciate it. You're probably the only delivery person who doesn't grumble about coming all the way out here." Ethan shrugged, leaning casually against the counter. "That's because I don't mind. This place is starting to feel like my favorite stop." Emma looked up at him, her eyes meeting his, and for a moment, the air seemed to shift. There was a softness in his gaze that made her heart flutter, a warmth that felt too good to be true. "Mommy, can Ethan stay for dinner?" Noah asked, suddenly breaking the spell. Emma hesitated, glancing between her son and Ethan. "Oh, I'm sure Ethan has other deliveries to make." Ethan, however, smiled. "Actually, I'm done for the day. If it's not too much trouble, I'd love to join you two." Noah cheered, and Emma couldn't help but laugh. "All right then. Hope you like spaghetti." As the three of them sat around the small kitchen table, the room was filled with the sound of laughter and clinking silverware. Noah recounted his adventures at preschool, animatedly describing how he and his friends built a snow fort during recess. Ethan listened intently, chiming in with questions and jokes that made Noah giggle uncontrollably. Emma watched them interact, a strange warmth spreading through her chest. It had been so long since her home had been filled with this kind of joy. Ethan's presence was easy, natural, as if he belonged here. "You're really good with kids," Emma said, breaking the momentary lull in conversation. Ethan glanced at her, his expression softening. "Thanks. I guess I've always liked kids. They're honest, you know. They don't hide how they feel." Emma nodded, her smile fading slightly. "Yeah, honesty is rare these days." Ethan studied her for a moment, sensing the weight behind her words. "Is that why you keep people at arm's length?" Emma's eyes widened and she looked away, her fingers nervously twisting her fork. "I don't know what you mean." Ethan leaned forward slightly, his tone gentle. "I mean, you're amazing, Emma. You're strong, kind, and you're raising an incredible kid. But it feels like you're scared to let anyone in." Emma swallowed hard, her heart pounding. He had seen right through her defenses, and it terrified her. "It's not that simple," she whispered. "I'm not saying it is," Ethan said softly. "But sometimes, it's okay to let someone share the load." For a moment, the only sound in the room was the crackling of the fireplace in the living room. Emma looked up at Ethan, her eyes searching his. There was no pity in his gaze, no judgment, only genuine care. "I'll think about it," she finally said, her voice barely audible. After dinner, Ethan helped Emma clean up, while Noah played with his dinosaur in the living room. As they worked side by side, their hands occasionally brushed against each other, sending little sparks of electricity through both of them. "You didn't have to stay and help," Emma said, glancing at him. "I wanted to," Ethan replied simply. Emma bit her lip, trying to suppress the smile threatening to form. She wasn't used to this, to someone being there for her without expecting anything in return. As Ethan placed the last dish in the drying rack, he turned to Emma. "You're really good at this, you know." "At what?" "Making a home. Noah's lucky to have you." Emma's eyes softened, and she felt her guard slipping. "Thank you, Ethan. That means more than you know," he smiled, his dimples making her heart flutter again. "Any time." When it was time for Ethan to leave, Noah clung to his leg, begging him to stay. "Hey, buddy," Ethan said, kneeling down. "I'll be back soon, okay? You've got to take care of your mom for me until then." Noah nodded solemnly. "I will." Emma walked him to the door, the warmth of the evening lingering between them. "Thank you for tonight," she said softly. "Thank you for letting me stay," Ethan replied. Their eyes met, and for a moment it felt like the world outside didn't exist. "Good night, Emma," Ethan said, his voice low and filled with something unspoken. "Good night, Ethan," she replied, her heart beating faster than she'd like to admit. As the door closed behind him, Emma leaned against it, closing her eyes and letting out a shaky breath. For the first time in years, she felt a glimmer of something she thought she'd lost forever. Hope. Ethan walked to his van, his heart light despite the chilly air. He knew he was treading dangerous ground, but he couldn't help it. Emma and Noah had become more than just another delivery stop. They had become the highlight of his days. And deep down, he knew he wanted more than just to deliver groceries to their door. He wanted to be part of their lives. Ethan's phone buzzed with a new delivery request, but he ignored it momentarily, leaning back in his chair at the small diner where he often planned his day. His thoughts weren't on the routes or schedules, they were on Emma. Over the past few weeks, he'd grown closer to her and Noah, and their little family had started to feel like something he wanted to protect. But behind his easy smiles and friendly demeanor, Ethan carried a secret of his own, the relentless hustle to turn his dream into reality. He had been saving every dollar he could, skipping meals and working long hours, all in the hope of one day starting his own delivery business. It wasn't just about the money, it was about proving to himself and maybe even to someone like Emma that he was capable of building something meaningful. Meanwhile, Emma stood in the cozy kitchen of her small home, staring at a stack of bills that seemed to grow larger by the day. The weight of her responsibilities pressed heavily on her chest. She thought about the dreams she had once nurtured, opening her own bakery, creating something that was entirely hers. But those dreams now seemed like distant, unreachable stars. She glanced at Noah, who was playing on the living room floor with his ever-present companion Spike. The sight of him brought a bittersweet smile to her face. He was her world, and everything she did was for him. But sometimes, in the quiet moments, she wondered what it would feel like to have someone share her burdens, someone who saw her not just as a mother, but as a woman with dreams and desires of her own. Her thoughts drifted to Ethan. There was something about him, his kindness, his ability to connect with Noah, the way he looked at her like she was more than just a tired single mom, that made her feel alive in a way she hadn't in years. But Emma had learned the hard way that letting someone in came with risks. The scars from her ex-husband's betrayal were still fresh, even after all these years. She couldn't afford to let her guard down, not again. One snowy evening, Ethan arrived at Emma's house with an unexpected delivery. As she opened the door, her eyes widened at the sight of him holding a box of pastries. "What's this?" she asked, her brow furrowing in confusion. "A little surprise," Ethan said, his dimples appearing as he smiled. "I remembered you mentioned wanting to open a bakery one day, so I thought you might enjoy these. They're from that fancy place downtown." Emma's heart fluttered at his thoughtfulness, but she also felt a pang of discomfort. Accepting kindness wasn't easy for her. It always felt like a debt she'd have to repay. "Ethan, you didn't have to do this," she said, though her voice softened at the end. "I know," he replied, "but I wanted to. And besides, Noah deserves a treat too, right?" At the mention of his name, Noah appeared, his eyes lighting up at the sight of the pastries. "Yum! Can we eat them now, Mummy?" Emma hesitated before nodding. "All right. But just one, okay?" As Noah eagerly grabbed a pastry and ran back to the living room, Ethan and Emma found themselves alone in the kitchen. "Why do you do things like this?" Emma asked, her voice tinged with both gratitude and wariness. Ethan shrugged, his gaze steady. "Because I care. About you and Noah. Is that so hard to believe?" Emma looked down, her fingers tracing the edge of the counter. "It's not about believing, Ethan. It's about trusting, and that's hard for me." Ethan took a step closer, his voice dropping to a gentle tone. "I'm not asking you to trust me overnight, but I'm not going anywhere, Emma. I want to be here, for you, for Noah. Whatever you'll let me be." Her eyes met his, and for a moment she felt the walls she had built so carefully begin to crack, but the fear of getting hurt again was stronger. I can't," she whispered, turning away. Ethan's heart ached at the pain in her voice, but he didn't push. "Okay," he said softly, "but if you ever change your mind, I'll be here." That night, as Ethan drove home, he couldn't shake the feeling of helplessness. He wanted to do more for Emma, to show her that she didn't have to carry everything alone. But he also knew that she had to let him in on her own terms. When he got home, he pulled out his notebook, a worn dog-eared journal where he kept track of his plans for his delivery business. Flipping through the pages, he paused at a rough sketch of a bakery delivery hybrid model he had been working on. "What if this could be for Emma?" he thought to himself. "What if I could help her dream become a reality?" The idea sparked a new determination in him. He would work harder, save more, and somehow make it happen. Emma might not trust him yet, but he would show her that he was serious, not just about the business, but about her. A week later, Emma faced her own emotional struggle when she received an email from her ex-husband, Tom. It was a short, formal message asking about Noah and whether he could visit during the holidays. Her hands trembled as she read the words. Tom had walked out on her when she was 6 months pregnant, leaving her to face the world alone. He had barely made an effort to stay in Noah's life, and now, out of nowhere, he wanted to show up. Emma's first instinct was to say no, but a part of her hesitated. Would it be fair to deny Noah a chance to know his father? But then she thought of Ethan, the way he had been there for Noah in ways Tom never had. Her mind swirled with conflicting emotions, and she realized just how much she had come to rely on Ethan's presence. But she couldn't burden him with this. It wasn't his problem to solve. The next time Ethan visited, he immediately noticed the tension in Emma's demeanor. She seemed distracted, her usual warmth dulled by something weighing heavily on her mind. "Hey," he said gently. "You okay?" Emma hesitated before sighing. "It's nothing, just life." Ethan studied her for a moment before nodding. "Well, if you ever want to talk about it, I'm here. No pressure." Emma looked at him, her heart aching at his sincerity. She wanted to tell him to let him in, but the fear of vulnerability held her back. "Thanks, Ethan," she said softly. As he left that evening, Emma watched him from the window, her emotions swirling like a storm. She didn't know if she could open her heart again, but deep down, she hoped Ethan would keep trying. The sound of a shattering glass echoed through the small house, sending Emma rushing into the living room. Her heart dropped at the sight of Noah lying on the floor, clutching his arm, tears streaming down his face. The glass of water he had been carrying lay in shards around him. "Mommy, it hurts," Noah sobbed, his tiny body trembling. Emma knelt beside him, her hands shaking as she gently examined his arm. It was swollen and already starting to bruise. Panic clawed at her chest as she realized it might be broken. She scooped him into her arms, her mind racing. Her phone was on the counter and she fumbled to dial the number she knew by heart. "Ethan," she said as soon as he picked up, her voice breaking. "I need help. Noah fell, and I think his arm is broken. I can't—" Her voice cracked, and she couldn't finish. "I'm on my way," Ethan said without hesitation. Ethan arrived in record time, his heart pounding as he ran up the steps to Emma's door. When she opened it, her face was pale and her eyes were red from crying. She didn't have to say anything. He stepped inside, scooping Noah into his arms with practiced ease. "It's going to be okay, buddy," Ethan said softly to Noah as he carried him to the car. Emma followed, her hands trembling as she climbed into the passenger seat. She glanced at Ethan, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you." "You don't have to thank me," Ethan replied, his jaw tight with determination. "Let's just get him to the hospital." The emergency room was a blur of activity, but Ethan's steady presence kept Emma grounded. He stayed by her side as the doctors examined Noah, reassuring her every step of the way. When the doctor confirmed it was a small fracture and Noah would be fine with a cast, Emma felt her knees go weak with relief. As they sat in the waiting room, Noah asleep in her lap, Emma turned to Ethan. "I don't know what I would have done without you tonight." Ethan shook his head. "You would have figured it out. You always do." She looked at him, her eyes filled with gratitude. "You give me too much credit." "No," he said softly, his gaze unwavering. "I don't give you enough." Her breath caught at the intensity in his eyes. For a moment, the chaos of the hospital melted away, leaving just the two of them. "Ethan," she started, but she didn't know how to finish. "You don't have to say anything," he said gently, his hand brushing against hers. "I'm just glad I could be here." The ride home was quiet, Noah still asleep in the back seat. Emma watched Ethan as he drove, his hands gripping the wheel, his profile illuminated by the soft glow of the dashboard. "Why are you so good to us?" she asked suddenly, her voice breaking the silence. Ethan glanced at her, his expression unreadable. "Because you and Noah deserve it. You've been through enough, Emma. I want to be the person you can rely on." Her heart ached at his words, the sincerity in his voice cutting through the walls she had built around herself. She looked out the window, blinking back tears. When they arrived home, Ethan carried Noah inside and gently laid him on the couch. Emma followed, her hands wringing nervously. She wasn't used to needing help, and it left her feeling vulnerable in a way that scared her. Ethan straightened up, turning to face her. "Do you need anything else before I go?" Emma hesitated, her mind battling her heart. She wanted to tell him to stay, to admit how much she needed him, but the words felt too big, too heavy. "No, we're okay," she said finally, her voice barely audible. Ethan nodded, his disappointment barely masked. All right. Call me if you need anything. As he turned to leave, Emma's voice stopped him. Ethan, wait. He turned back, his eyes searching hers. Thank you, she said, her voice trembling, for everything. I don't know how to repay you. You don't have to, he said, his voice soft. I'd do it 100 times over. Her heart swelled, and for a brief moment she considered stepping forward, closing the distance between them. But the fear held her back, and she watched as he left, the door clicking softly behind him. The next morning, Emma woke to the sound of her phone buzzing. She groggily reached for it and saw a text from Ethan. Good morning. I hope Noah's feeling better. Let me know if you guys need anything today. I'm here. Emma stared at the message, her chest tightening. She couldn't remember the last time someone had cared this much, had gone out of their way to make her feel safe. She wanted to reply, to tell him how much it meant to her, but instead, she typed a simple thank you. We're okay. She set the phone down, feeling a pang of guilt. Ethan deserved more than she was giving him, but she didn't know how to let go of the fear that held her back. Later that day, Ethan showed up unannounced, holding a bag of groceries and a small gift for Noah. You didn't have to do that, Emma said as she opened the door, but there was no mistaking the warmth in her voice. I wanted to, Ethan replied, stepping inside. Noah lit up at the sight of him, his little arm now in a bright blue cast. Ethan, look at my cast. Mummy says I can draw on it. Nice colour, buddy, Ethan said, grinning. Maybe I'll sign it later. As Ethan and Noah chatted, Emma watched them, her heart swelling with a mixture of emotions. She didn't want to admit it, but she was falling for him. Slowly, cautiously, but undeniably. That evening, as Ethan prepared to leave, Emma stopped him at the door. Ethan, she said, her voice soft. I want you to know that I appreciate you, more than I can say. He turned to her, his expression gentle. I know, Emma, and I hope someday you'll let me be the person you don't have to thank for being here. Her breath caught at his words, and she felt the fragile walls around her heart begin to crumble. I'll try, she whispered. Ethan smiled, his eyes filled with quiet hope. That's all I ask. As he left, Emma stood in the doorway, watching him disappear into the night. For the first time in years, she felt the weight on her shoulders lighten, and she knew that something had changed. Maybe, just maybe, she could trust again. And the snow outside had turned to slush, and the winter chill was replaced by a faint promise of spring. Ethan's days were packed, deliveries, side gigs, and late nights spent poring over business plans. Yet, no matter how busy he got, he always made time for Emma and Noah. They had become the bright spot in his life, and the thought of seeing their smiles at the end of a long day made everything worthwhile. For Emma, Ethan's presence had become a source of comfort she hadn't realized she needed. He was reliable in a way no one else had ever been, and she found herself looking forward to his visits. Still, she struggled to let him fully into her life. Trust didn't come easy after the betrayal she had endured, and while her feelings for Ethan grew stronger with each passing day, a part of her remained cautious, afraid of what it would mean to take that leap. One sunny afternoon, Ethan stopped by unannounced, carrying a small box wrapped in brown paper. Emma opened the door, surprised to see him. What's this? She asked, eyeing the package. A little something for you and Noah, Ethan said with a grin, stepping inside. Emma raised an eyebrow. Ethan, you've already done so much for us. You don't have to keep spoiling us. It's not spoiling if it makes you smile, he replied, setting the box on the counter. Go on, open it. Curious, Emma carefully unwrapped the package. Inside was a set of baking tools, decorative icing tips, a rolling pin, and a few other essentials. At the bottom was a small card that read, For the bakery you'll have one day. I believe in you. Emma stared at the contents, her throat tightening as tears welled in her eyes. Ethan, I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, Ethan said softly, his gaze steady. I just wanted to remind you that your dreams matter. You matter, Emma. Her eyes met his, and in that moment, The weight of her doubts and fears felt a little lighter. That evening, after Noah had gone to bed, Emma found herself sitting on the couch with Ethan, the warm glow of the fireplace casting soft shadows around them. She held the card he had given her fingers tracing the words as she worked up the courage to speak. "Ethan," she began, her voice hesitant, "why do you do all this for us? For me?" Ethan leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees as he considered her question. "Because I see something in you, Emma. You're strong and you've been through so much, but you haven't let it break you. And I admire that." She looked at him, her heart pounding. "But what if I'm not as strong as you think? What if I'm scared of letting someone in, scared of this?" Ethan reached for her hand, his touch gentle yet firm. "It's okay to be scared. I am too. But sometimes the things that scare us the most are the ones worth fighting for." Emma felt a tear slip down her cheek as his words sank in. She wanted to believe him, to trust that this was real, but the fear of getting hurt again loomed large. "I don't want to let you down," she whispered. "You couldn't," Ethan said, his voice steady. "Not if you tried." As the weeks passed, Ethan and Emma grew closer, their connection deepening in ways neither of them had expected. Ethan began to share more about his own struggles, his dreams of starting a delivery business, the long hours he worked, and the sacrifices he made to keep his dream alive. Emma, in turn, started opening up about her past, the pain of her failed marriage and the challenges of raising Noah on her own. Each shared story brought them closer, and the walls Emma had built around her heart began to crumble bit by bit. But just as things seemed to be falling into place, Emma's past came crashing back into her life. One afternoon, while she was at work, her ex-husband Ryan showed up at the diner. He looked as polished as ever, his suit impeccable, but the sight of him made Emma's stomach twist. "Ryan," she said, her voice cold, "what are you doing here?" "I wanted to see you," Ryan said smoothly, as if he had any right to show up unannounced. "And Noah, it's been too long." Emma crossed her arms, her gaze hard. "It's been long because you chose to leave. You don't get to just walk back into our lives whenever it's convenient for you." Ryan sighed, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair. "I made mistakes, Emma, but I'm here now. I want to make things right." Emma felt a surge of anger and disbelief. "You think you can make up for 5 years of absence with a few pretty words? Noah doesn't even know you. He doesn't need you." Ryan's expression darkened. "I'm his father, Emma. I have a right to see him." Before she could respond, Ethan walked into the diner, his timing both perfect and terrible. He froze when he saw Emma with Ryan, immediately sensing the tension between them. "Is everything okay?" Ethan asked, his protective instincts kicking in. Emma turned to him, her face pale. "Ethan, this is Ryan, Noah's father." Ethan's jaw tightened as he looked at Ryan, his eyes hardening. "So, you're the guy who walked out on them." Ryan bristled. "I don't know who you are, but this is none of your business." "It is when it involves Emma and Noah," Ethan shot back. Emma stepped between them, her voice firm. "Stop, both of you. Ryan, you need to leave. Now." Ryan looked at her, his expression a mix of frustration and disbelief. "This isn't over, Emma." As Ryan walked out, Ethan turned to Emma, his anger giving way to concern. "Are you okay?" Emma nodded, though her hands were trembling. "I'm fine, just shaken." Ethan placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to face this alone, Emma. I'm here." Her eyes filled with tears as she looked at him. "I know, and that means more to me than you'll ever know." That night, as Emma sat in her living room, she thought about everything Ethan had done for her and Noah. He wasn't just kind or dependable, he was someone she could truly trust. And for the first time in years, she felt ready to take a chance. She picked up her phone and sent Ethan a message. "Thank you for always being there for us. Can we talk tomorrow? I need to tell you something." Ethan's reply came almost immediately. "Of course. Anytime." As she set the phone down, Emma took a deep breath. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing for certain. Ethan was worth the risk. Emma sat on the edge of her couch, her hands clasped tightly in her lap as she waited for Ethan to arrive. The air in the room was thick with anticipation, her heart pounding in her chest. She had spent the night replaying every moment Ethan had been there for her and Noah, every kind gesture, every word of encouragement. For the first time in years, she felt ready to let go of her fears and embrace the possibility of love. A knock at the door jolted her from her thoughts. She took a deep breath, smoothing her sweater before opening the door to reveal Ethan standing there, his familiar smile warming her nerves. "Hey," he said, his voice soft but filled with curiosity. "You said you needed to talk?" Emma nodded, stepping aside to let him in. As he walked into the living room, his presence filled the space, steady and comforting. Noah was at a sleepover, so it was just the two of them, a rare moment of quiet. Ethan turned to face her, his expression open but tinged with concern. "Is everything okay?" Emma gestured for him to sit, taking the spot beside him. For a moment she couldn't find the words. Her emotions threatened to overwhelm her. She looked down at her hands, then back up at him, her eyes meeting his. "I've been thinking a lot about us," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "About everything you've done for me and Noah. You've been there in ways I didn't think anyone ever could." Ethan listened intently, his eyes never leaving hers. "Emma, you don't have to thank me. I've told you before. I care about you, both of you." She smiled faintly, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I know, and that's what scares me." "Why?" he asked gently, leaning forward. "Because I've been hurt before," she admitted, her voice breaking. "Ryan made me believe that love always comes with pain, that people leave when it gets hard." Ethan reached for her hand, his touch warm and grounding. "Emma, I'm not Ryan. I'm not here to hurt you or leave you. I'm here because I want to be. Because I see something beautiful in you and Noah, and I want to be a part of it." Her heart swelled at his words, the sincerity in his voice melting away the last of her reservations. She took a deep breath, finally allowing herself to say what she had been holding back. "I'm falling for you, Ethan," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know how it happened, but I can't deny it anymore." Ethan's face lit up, a mixture of relief and joy washing over him. "Emma," he said, his voice filled with emotion, "I've been falling for you since the day I walked through that door. You've been on my mind every day, and the thought of you and Noah is what keeps me going." Tears slipped down Emma's cheeks, but this time they were tears of relief, of hope. "I've been so afraid of letting you in, but now, I don't want to be afraid anymore." Ethan cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs gently wiping away her tears. "You don't have to be. I'm here, Emma, and I'm not going anywhere." Their eyes locked, and in that moment the world seemed to fade away. Slowly, Ethan leaned in, giving her plenty of time to pull back if she wanted to. But she didn't. Instead, she closed the gap, their lips meeting in a kiss that was both tender and electric. It was a kiss filled with every unspoken word, every ounce of emotion they had held back. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the windows as Emma and Ethan sat at the kitchen table, sharing coffee and quiet conversation. The weight that had once pressed on Emma's heart felt lighter now, replaced by a sense of peace she hadn't felt in years. Noah burst through the front door later that afternoon, chattering excitedly about his sleepover. When he saw Ethan, his face lit up. "Ethan, you're here!" Ethan grinned, scooping Noah up in a bear hug. "Of course, buddy, I missed you." Emma watched the two of them, her heart full. She had been so scared of letting someone into their lives, but now she couldn't imagine a world without Ethan in it. But just as they began to settle into this new chapter, Ryan returned, determined to reclaim his place in Noah's life. He showed up unannounced one evening, his polished appearance masking the manipulative man Emma knew too well. "I want to be a father to my son," Ryan declared, his tone firm as he stood in the doorway. Emma's hands clenched at her sides. You had your chance, Ryan. You don't get to waltz back in and disrupt our lives. Ryan's gaze shifted to Ethan, who stood protectively at Emma's side. And who's this? The new boyfriend? I'm someone who cares about Emma and Noah, Ethan replied calmly, though his eyes burned with quiet anger. And I won't let you hurt them, Ryan sneered. You think you can replace me? I'm Noah's father. You're his father in name only, Emma shot back, her voice trembling with anger. You've never been there for him, and he doesn't need you now. Ryan's face darkened, but before he could respond, Noah appeared behind Emma, clutching Spike. Mommy, who is that? He asked, his voice small. Emma turned, her heart breaking at the confusion on her son's face. Noah, this is Ryan. He's your biological father. Noah looked up at Ryan, then back at Ethan. But Ethan's my dad. Ryan's expression faltered and Ethan knelt down to Noah's level, his voice gentle. Hey, buddy, it's okay. I'm always going to be here for you, no matter what. Emma's heart swelled with love and gratitude for Ethan. She placed a hand on his shoulder, her voice firm as she addressed Ryan. I won't let you disrupt our lives, Ryan. You walked away once, and we're better off without you. Ryan opened his mouth to argue, but the conviction in Emma's voice silenced him. He gave them one last glare before turning and leaving, the sound of the door closing behind him echoing through the room. That night, as Emma and Ethan sat together on the couch, Noah asleep in his room, Emma turned to him, her eyes shining with emotion. You've been more of a father to Noah than Ryan ever was, she said softly. And I've never been more certain that you're exactly what we need. Ethan smiled, pulling her into his arms. I'll never stop being here for you, Emma. For both of you. As they sat together, the warmth of their love filling the room, Emma finally felt like they had found the family she had always dreamed of. It wasn't perfect, and it hadn't come easily, but it was real. And that was all that mattered. But the bakery buzzed with the sweet aroma of freshly baked bread, cookies and cupcakes as sunlight streamed through the large front windows. The newly opened space was warm and inviting, its shelves lined with pastries and bread Emma had crafted herself. Small bouquets of flowers adorned each table, and a chalkboard near the counter proudly displayed the day's specials. Above it, in delicate white cursive, was the shop's name, Noah's Treats. Ethan stood behind the counter, organising receipts and chatting with a customer while Emma worked in the kitchen. It had been a whirlwind few months since they had decided to turn their dreams into a shared reality. Ethan's delivery service now included same-day deliveries for the bakery, an idea that had proven wildly successful. Their combined efforts had created a business that not only thrived, but also became a cornerstone of the community. Emma peeked out from the kitchen, wiping flour from her hands as she watched Ethan interact with customers. His easy charm and genuine warmth had made him a favourite among their regulars. She couldn't help but smile as she saw him laugh at something an elderly woman said, his dimples flashing in the sunlight. Her heart swelled with gratitude and love. Ethan had become more than just a partner in business. He was her partner in life. He had shown her what it meant to be supported, to be truly loved, and she couldn't imagine a world without him. Mommy! Noah's excited voice pulled her from her thoughts. She turned to see her son running into the bakery, his backpack bouncing with every step. He had just come from school, and as always, his energy was boundless. Hey, sweetheart, Emma said, crouching down to hug him. How was your day? It was awesome. Miss Carter said I did a great job on my spelling test, Noah announced proudly. That's wonderful. I'm so proud of you. Ethan joined them, ruffling Noah's hair. Great job, buddy. Want to celebrate with a cookie? Noah's face lit up. Yes, please. Ethan handed him a chocolate chip cookie, and Noah scampered off to a corner table to eat it. Emma stood and turned to Ethan, her smile softening. You're amazing with him, you know that? Ethan shrugged, a playful glint in his eye. He makes it easy. Besides, I've had a pretty amazing teacher. Emma blushed, her heart fluttering at his words. She reached out, brushing a stray hair from his forehead. I don't know how I got so lucky. Ethan caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. I'm the lucky one, Emma. You and Noah. You've changed my life in ways I can't even put into words. As the evening approached, the bakery quieted down, and they began to close for the day. Noah played with Spike in the corner, his laughter filling the room as Emma and Ethan cleaned up. You know, Ethan said, glancing at Emma as he wiped down the counter. This place has really come together. It's everything you dreamed of, isn't it? Emma paused, looking around the bakery. The warm lights, the cozy atmosphere, the happy customers. It was more than she had ever imagined. It's not just my dream anymore, she said softly, turning to him. It's ours. Ethan's eyes met hers, a spark of emotion passing between them. Ours, he repeated, his voice filled with quiet conviction. Later that night, after Noah had fallen asleep in his room upstairs, Emma and Ethan sat on the small balcony overlooking the quiet street. The stars were scattered across the sky, their light reflecting in Emma's eyes as she leaned against Ethan's shoulder. It's funny, Emma said, breaking the comfortable silence. I spent so many years thinking I had to do everything on my own. I thought that asking for help made me weak. Ethan kissed the top of her head, his arm tightening around her. You're the strongest person I've ever met, Emma. But even the strongest people deserve someone to lean on. She looked up at him, her heart full. I don't know what I did to deserve you, Ethan. You showed me who you really are, he said simply. That's more than enough. For a moment, they just stared at each other, the connection between them deeper than words could express. Then, Ethan shifted, reaching into his pocket. There's something I've been meaning to do, he said, his voice tinged with both nervousness and excitement. Emma's breath hitched as he pulled out a small velvet box. Ethan. He opened the box to reveal a delicate ring, the diamond catching the starlight. Emma, he began, his voice steady despite the emotions swirling in his eyes. You and Noah are my world. You've shown me what it means to love and to be loved. I don't want to spend another day without you by my side. Will you marry me? Tears streamed down Emma's cheeks as she nodded, unable to find the words. Yes, she finally whispered. 1,000 times yes. Ethan slipped the ring onto her finger, his own eyes glistening with tears. He pulled her into a kiss, the stars above bearing witness to their love and the promise of their future together. The next day, the bakery was abuzz with excitement as the news of their engagement spread. Regular customers stopped by to congratulate them, and Noah proudly showed off the ring to anyone who would look. I'm getting a new dad, he announced to one of the customers, his smile brighter than the sun. Emma and Ethan shared a laugh, their hearts full as they watched the boy who had brought them together. As the weeks turned into months, Emma and Ethan's lives continued to intertwine. Their love grew stronger with each passing day, and the bakery flourished under their combined efforts. And on a warm spring afternoon, surrounded by friends, family, and the aroma of freshly baked bread, Emma and Ethan said their vows in the very place where their story had begun. As they stood together, hand in hand, with Noah at their side, Emma realized that she had found everything she had ever hoped for. A partner, a family, and a love that made her feel whole.